So today we are fortunate to have Aaron Howard and Sven Ackerman Jr. with us. Aaron Howard brings 15 years in state government consulting and 20 years as a Seattle high-tech executive. As CEO and Chief Technology Officer, Aaron's vision for Mass Ingenuity's enterprise performance management methodology began in 2007, leading to the company's results management system and software. Aaron's engineering and mathematics background has been applied to biomedical devices, complex data visualization, and now AI, and its application to government agency performance. This vision has been implemented at dozens of state agencies, including the Arizona Department of Corrections, California Department of Motor Vehicles, New Mexico Department of Health, New Mexico Attorney General's Office, Oregon Information Services, Oregon Department of Human Services, Oregon Health Authority, Oregon Department of Transportation, Oregon Fish and Wildlife, Washington Healthcare Authority, and Washington Division of Vocational Rehabilitation. Sven Ackerman Jr. has over 20 years in state government, consulting as a seasoned technology executive and change agent. He is passionate about harnessing the transformative power of technology to achieve business objectives. He gauges his success by his clients' eagerness and adaptability to emerging technology. He has spearheaded IT, engineering, and cloud managed service systems. As the CEO of Olympia's Outlook Insight, he works with clients to strike a balance between organizational freedom and procedural discipline in order to achieve innovative solutions. During Sven's tenure as CTO of Allegiance Enterprises, the company was awarded the Rising Star Partner of the Year award from Microsoft in 2016 and Microsoft's Partner of the Year for Digital Transformation in 2017. Outlook Insight's clients include state agencies from across the country. And without further ado, here are Aaron and Sven.
Thank you, Jeannie. Much appreciated. I'm going to take just a moment and share my screen. So let me just do that and see if I can be error-free on it. Quick double check. Did my screen share, Jeannie?
Yes, it has. Yes.
Great. So again, thank you very much. Before we dive in, I just want to mention that we'll review the materials that are made available. We are going to use some of these slides, but we're not actually going to use all of them because Sven and I want to just talk to you all and share this really interesting story around enterprise performance management and AI. But we are going to use a few slides in the very beginning, starting right now. So let me do that. Again, my name is Aaron Howard, and I'm the president and CEO of Mass Ingenuity. We've had the very good fortune of being able to work with now over 88 state agencies across the country on their journey around performance management. It's been an exciting journey. A lot of progress has been made. It's really exciting to see the impact it has on citizens, and yet there's so much more that can be done, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. I also want to thank the Washington Results folks because we've been able to be part of the conference for many years, and it has just been a very exciting opportunity to share and learn as we go forward. Today, Sven and I are going to be presenting as really kind of a chat, if you will, talking together and talking with you about what we're doing. I kind of think of it as, it's a little bit like SNL's weekly update, except without the irreverence, and of course with some content that will be good for the continuous learning experience as well. In any case, that's a little bit about me, and now to Sven.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Aaron. My name is Sven Ackerman Jr. I am the founder and CEO of Outlook Insight. We really focus on harnessing the power of AI, automation, and modern technology, really to unlock those new possibilities for public sector performance. We're going to show you how this combination of AI and enterprise performance management can be a game changer for your agency, how it enables your staff to do more with less, and why now is the perfect time to really embrace this integration. Like so many other Washington families, ours depends on the state to care for a loved one too. And everything we do is personal and drives us to improve social services and other government outcomes. So I hope you learned something new today and enjoy this brief look at how technology enables our shared mission. And with that, back to you, Aaron, to get us going. Thank you.
A little bit about the materials that are available for you. The slide deck, of course, is available. In addition, we're sharing a white paper. It's about transforming government and transforming lives. And it's a really interesting view of how all of us can actually make a large difference for those that we serve. So it's kind of an exciting view. It is showing how enterprise performance management, or performance management in general, can make a huge difference. And then third is an opportunity to just take a free performance management quick check. There is a slide in the deck that has, as you can see right here, a link or a QR code. And please take a moment when you get that to click on it and take a look at a few questions, answer them, and we'll see how your organization is doing in the whole area of performance management. It's intriguing to take a look at that and just see how we're doing. We do it ourselves because every year things have changed, every year things get better, and every year there's new opportunities for growth. Well, one thing for sure, before we start on the journey of what is this all about, AI and EPM, I think it's good that we talk a little bit about, so where might it be going? Or for that matter, where is it now in terms of the vision for the future? There's a lot of opportunity here to expand the way we do things, service delivery different, and just in general have a very different view of the world. So Sven's going to take a moment to actually set that vision before we tell the incomplete story. Sven.
Yeah, if I was to look into a crystal ball, the future is really one that is leaner and it's easier with organizations that have knowledge at their fingertips to inform day-to-day decisions and overall direction. Imagine a time when, progress across your organization is constantly within view. It's accurate and it's up to date, where insights about your journey are tailor-made and informative to drive that next day and future direction for your teams. Again, one where, how those efforts are contributing to your mission, your vision, and your values of your organization overall. And all of that is punctuated with a sense of why. Our teams have gone from reactive to data-driven, and the gains that we are able to see when you make that transformation are nothing short of miraculous, from slow times to quick times, from low outcomes to high outcomes. Before we get into too much more of that, I wanted to make sure that we understand a little bit more about what the word why really means from the perspective of the Golden Circle and how it leads to more efficient service delivery within government. For that, Aaron, I know you got that kind of teed up. Why don't you take it from here?
In everything we do, it's very easy to start talking about how and what, but especially how. And yet, in our daily lives, starting with why is so important. So we want to start with why relative to this topic of AI and EPM. But let's just back up for a moment and actually ask the question, why do we care about EPM? And in general, our experience working with agencies over many years now is that it has to do with delivering on the mission and vision of the agency and doing it in a way that is more effective, greater levels of service, sometimes dealing with budget constraints. But in general, the why we exist is to deliver that service. So if we apply the same principle to why EPM and AI, it turns out that it's to do the same thing, but do it better, to enhance the way in which we provide the service, to increase the accountability, to optimize how we use resources, especially if we're constrained by budget, and essentially to adapt to what is becoming very rapid social changes that we have to adapt to. Most of us know that the services that are required by many, many citizens are delivered by state and local. And that puts enormous pressure on state and local to be able to provide them in ever better quality with less money, generally speaking, and a whole lot of more complexity. So the why this is important is that we have to be able to do that better. It's ultimately going to allow us to transform how we deliver our services and how we really transform lives. It's going to significantly change the way in which we do the services. And frankly, it's going to be a lot more fun and interesting for all of us because we're suddenly doing things the way we'd like to do it. For those of you who are, lean practitioners, think back a decade or so. Just think about what it was like when you first started doing lean in government. And now fast forward today. Maybe even think about the evolution of this conference during that time. We really talk about the same basic principles, but the world in which we do the work has changed dramatically, and the way we do it is very different. So that is essentially the why we're having this conversation, to talk about a different world that is in fact better. I need to now make a little switch, so bear with me while I stop sharing. There we go. And I'll just verify. I think that we are done with the sharing stuff. And now we want to actually tell our story. The story is going to be divided into several parts. You can think of them as like chapters or modules or even acts, but they're designed to help us tell a story from where we are today in terms of EPM to where we will be shortly, if not already, with EPM and AI. To fully appreciate the impact of AI, we need to first understand where traditional EPM systems, have reached their limits. Many of you are familiar with the key components of EPM. They might include tracking KPIs or budgeting, forecasting, performance management reporting in general, dealing with a strategy or dealing with the fundamentals or the operations, or as one leader put it, keeping the trains running. But in today's fast-paced world, relying on manual data collection, slow-moving reports is just not adequate anymore. And we'll go into a little more detail about the EPM process in just a bit, but it's safe to say that we really need to move faster, and we need to have access to data much more differently than we did before. Examples of this include resource constraints. We all operate under constraints that might be budget and staff. They may be constraints having to do with our charter, and we have to somehow still get the job done. Accountability pressures are increasing dramatically. We have to perform, but we also have to perform within a context of policy and regulatory environment that, if anything, is becoming more complex. All of these things basically result in the idea that if we're focused on our performance, it's going to become harder and harder to achieve what we need to do because our environment is changing rapidly. Sven, take a moment and actually drill down on some of these requirements and stuff before we start talking about the changes.
Yeah, well, I've been involved directly with enterprise performance management in organizations for a little over 16 years now. And, the traditional EPM approaches, they've always been helpful, don't get me wrong, but they've been challenging as well. They struggle with things like, dynamic real-time demand. So when we look at, accountability pressures and regulatory complexity, the goal is to move the needle in the right direction. And when you don't have real-time information, that becomes a real burden. So some of the symptoms that we tend to see are things like data coming in too slowly to actually do something about it, to influence it in a positive direction, or it requires specialized expertise that you may not have directly on your team to actually absorb and digest. And really, it's just difficult decision makers to act slowly. And because these systems often rely on manual processes, there's an increased risk of things like human error or inefficiencies, and frankly, just lagging insights. Further complicating things is that few have the time to keep up the data within these tracking systems, much less understanding the trends and insights that can accelerate that progress. We know that there is a direct correlation between digesting lead measures, those things that you can measure right now that are predictive of achieving an outcome, versus measuring something so late that you can't do anything to change it or influence it in the right direction. Now, Aaron, I know that you've been involved with so many of these organizations with enterprise performance management. You've had a direct a direct impact personally and as well as seeing it within your customers in terms of like real-time insights when they're missing in an organization. Can you share a little bit about your experience and what you've come to learn?
The topic of real time or near real time is an interesting one. When we find folks focused on, say, a quarterly review, in reality, what they're doing is looking backwards and seeing how things went. Not very real time, instructive, important, but what it does is it says, how did we do? As we start to move that towards monthly reviews, we start to have the ability to look both backwards, but also to look at the leading indicators. In our language, that would be the process measures that tell us what's going on right now. And if those measures were collected in recent time, then it's generally speaking an accurate representation of how a process is today. So for example, if the process is eligibility and I've got a process measure that gives me some sense of timing, it's probably pretty accurate. As we go into weekly and huddles and daily huddles, all of a sudden things become more real time. But on the other hand, we're managing very complicated organizations. And so the whole goal is to be able to have a required data set, so necessary and sufficient, that's available to us, in fact, as close to real time as possible. The collection process can be difficult. It can be hard to get it out of a system. It can be sometimes just plain hard to translate it into something that's normalized. The problems go on and on and on. So going forward, the idea of having a mature, data-driven organization that's making insightful decisions means also having the systems to support that. And that's a little bit about what we're talking about today is how can we use AI to help us get to that, if you will, holy grail of almost real time, if not real time, so we can do the jobs. That's the thing that we're noticing most is that getting the data is just one large challenge. So that kind of leads to the next topic, which is, so what about this integration? How do we do that? And, is it meaningful? Can it be done? And the answer is yes. To start with, though, we have to kind of imagine, okay, well, what does the system, look like today? Well, imagine a system where data doesn't sit in reports, but actively works for you. For example, what if we had constant analyzing, predicting, and insights? What if that was available pretty much all the time? That's where AI comes into play. Let's break down the steps involved this and first analyze what does a good data-driven organization look like? So this is a little bit of a primer on enterprise performance management. Or for any lean organization, it's, well, what does a lean organization that's operating well look like? Well, first of all, we do need to know how our daily operations work. What are the essential operating and supporting processes that deliver services to citizens? In other words, the fundamentals. Keeping the trains running, making sure we're doing what we're supposed to do. Well, outcome measures will ensure that we're delivering on the key goals, and those are generally lagging. Process measures will make sure that we are able to assess and continuously improve on the operations of the core processes that need attention. Business reviews, as we said earlier, allow us to have a conversation, and it may be quarterly, monthly, weekly, daily. But in any case, we're having a conversation and hopefully extracting insights from the data. Well, if we stopped right there, it wouldn't matter. We hadn't done anything yet because we really needed to have the action plans. What are we going to do to focus on critical improvements? And if we do all of that and then apply good old PDCA, plan, do, check, adjust, and just keep repeating it over and over again, then we're going to, in fact, be learning and improving. So that, of course, is just a primer on what enterprise performance management is, but it's challenged, as we've just said, by the fact that getting the data can sometimes be the hardest thing in the maturation process and analyzing it, etc. So with that, Sven, talk a little bit about this integration and how we might be able to change it.
Sure. And of course, by the title of this presentation, AI is certainly a topic we will discuss. And I'll be sharing a brief history of AI here shortly. But by integrating AI or artificial intelligence into your enterprise performance management, we're not just optimizing performance management, you're really transforming it. Technology is doing what it's good at doing. AI can comb through massive data sets, uncovering things like trends and patterns and insights that would otherwise remain hidden or buried in an ocean of data. So really, what does that mean for government? Well, to me, it means you can shift from manual reactive problem solving to something that's more automated, predictive, proactive, um, and better planned. You know, some of the key things that I see happening with the introduction of this technology into performance management are things like predictive analytics. You've heard us mention that a few times, where um, AI is really good at looking at that data and enabling forecasting based on historical and real-time data. What that does for us is it's driving an agency's ability to anticipate the future needs and challenges, much deeper knowledge about things that have happened that are influencing the directionality or which way that measurement needle is moving. Another key area that we really see as an enhancement is automation, where routine tasks like reporting, compliance checks, data validation, we can automate those, we can inspect those, we can understand them far more better, and that's going to free up the human resources for higher value activities, such as based on what we're learning from this data system, what should we be doing as opposed to spending that time understanding what it is doing. I mean, finally, those real-time insights, you know, AI, along with that automated data retrieval, it provides that live, continuously updated data that decision makers can then access instantly. And what that does, it really improves the response time and resource allocation to make sure that you have the right focus on the right problems at the right time. Now, like with anything, there are some common process challenges that we all face. So I'd like to kind of explore some real world examples, hopefully to make this topic a little bit more durably understandable by everyone, to really illustrate the problem and the opportunities. And Aaron, can you share with us a real world example of something that you've seen out there?
Yes, there's a couple that I'd like to share. The first one is a process, and it's a process that most of us have either experienced and maybe been a victim of even. And the process is days to hire. Almost every agency has some metric associated with days to hire. Often, an agency will set a target for this and then consistently miss it. For example, a target may be set at 50 days. Well, not unreasonable amount of time to make a hire. And yet the actual days are 100 to 150 days. So it's clearly very irritating and very upsetting, because if we're short on resources and we need to hire them and we actually have vacancies and we can hire them, we want to get them in quickly. So it's clearly a problem. Traditional problem solving will eventually lead to a process improvement plan, but it'll often take weeks and months to determine the root cause. It's a long time. With AI, we really have the ability to rapidly analyze the process steps and compare the data to benchmarks from other agencies and domains and states. Potentially, what took months can be reduced to weeks, and weeks reduced to days. Now, that sounds really aggressive for any of us that have dealt with this particular process. And yet, if we can, in fact, reduce months to weeks, we've already made a great step forward. That's one example. The other example I want to share is actually around the predictive aspect of data. So this particular example comes from corrections, and I'm kind of reporting on what I've heard from experts in the corrections field who have had to deal with problems such as uprisings. Not a very pleasant thing. Assaults and uprising, all these things are things that are just very unpleasant to deal with, and every corrections group has to deal with them. So the question becomes, is there any way to predict a potential uprising? And I asked this question of several leaders, and they consistently said, well, yes, there is. And in their opinion, they said there was two parameters that they thought were very important. One was, in fact, how much was being spent at the commissary, and the other was how much food was being consumed. I, of course, questioned that, and maybe looked a little starry-eyed when I said, "What?" And yet the answer that they came back with, and I have to believe this, is that those parameters changed ahead of a problem that would be uprising or riots or whatever. And so if that's true, and let's just take that as an assumption, the question then becomes, well, then why are they not looking at the data? And I asked that question. And the answer was, it's not readily available. It's hard to get. Struck me as odd. And so there's an example where if we could get a hold of that data, let the AI get it and present it. Now, does it actually mean there's going to be an uprising? I don't know, and I don't think they know. But it's okay if there's a false negative because it means you took some action. Those are examples of real world ways in which AI could change things and change them pretty darn quick.
Yeah, and Aaron, we've also seen, in terms of success stories around this, where we've seen some really incredible use cases where AI has been brought forward, and we can take now and make measurable differences in a couple of different domain spaces. I spend an awful lot of time volunteering with schools here locally. I live here in Olympia. I volunteer with several different organizations that support local high schools and our local junior colleges. And one thing that we've seen is that when we analyze student performance data, we're able to help education departments identify trends and adjust programs to better suit the needs and the demands of today's students. It really enables a tailored learning plan that meets students' unique needs, right? So imagine if you have the insight, if you don't have to take the time to put the data together yourself, and you can see these trends that indicate a student needs help in a particular area, they have the ability now to tailor that one student's needs and curate a different approach for them, really helping to ensure that the resources are allocated where they're most effective for that student's success and outcome. We see something similar over in human services, where the demand for social services, it has cycles, right? And AI can accurately forecast some of those demands based on historical trends, such as housing, the demand for housing, healthcare assistance. This is really helping agencies become better prepared for some of those surges in the needs of the community, and ensuring that resources are distributed optimally to make sure that they can meet that demand. And then one of my favorite success stories is when we look at the frontline supports that are offered to the community in terms of call centers. These are parts of organizations that are picking up the phone for people who are either in need or in crisis. And right now you hear so many stories about these very, very long wait times, non-responsiveness. There's frustration amongst the call center employees. And so, with the application of AI, we can better prioritize some of that demand for those services by inspecting and listening and understanding the calls and the sentiment of the caller, or even the cases that they may send in through email or other vehicles to highlight their needs, and really surface the most critical needs for human review, as opposed to the way that this has historically happened. Is these are just first in, first out queues, meaning the first call in is going to get the first response. Well, when you have a queue depth that is beyond the capacity of your team, this can mean, hours of wait time if you ever get a response at all. And that's unfortunately not atypical today. Now, AI can help that by it can help those frontline workers speed up those call times, thereby increasing their capacity. Imagine they had more answers more readily available and at their fingertips that could then be used to get the citizens what they need in terms of a response and move on to the next call, right? And we've seen that right now. There are some organizations that have very, very thick manuals that these frontline workers have to search through using keyword search and things like that. And it can take an awful long time for them to come up with the right answers or the right direction for them. So, all of these are better experience for those that we serve. And although these are just three short examples, I think if you kind of overlay some of this on in terms of where you see an opportunity to gain an insight to get ahead of the challenge as opposed to being set back by it, these are the kinds of things that we're seeing in terms of success stories today.
Indeed. The story on the call center inevitably makes me think about a story that we actually experienced with our customer, with our product. And it was this. Several years ago, we introduced a bot, and we were very proud of our bot. The bot is named Milo. And Milo just seemed like a really great thing because when our customers needed to ask a question about enterprise performance, for example, how do I set up a measure? The bot would go off and give them articles. And that seemed really cool. But it doesn't seem so cool anymore because who wants to read all those articles? So fortunately, we were able to then add the AI component onto Milo. And so now folks talk to Milo and say things like, well, how do I control this chart? Milo looks at all of the material that's available to it. It's been taught a lot, and then provides an answer in a nice, simple, quick story. In other words, it curates all of the information into something that's consumable right now that actually solves the problem, as opposed to saying, I'll let you solve the problem. And I really think that this whole area, Sven, where what we are doing is sort of taking what can just still cause more cycle time loss, more time, where people are having to hunt for stuff or can't even find it anyway, for example, policies. I think it's just a wonderful way to provide instant value to the person doing the work so that they can hand that off to the customer. And in the case of this Milo story, it actually was a direct handoff to the customer. So it was really exciting. And it just made me realize something you're going to talk about later. Don't always overcomplicate it. Find a place to start.
For sure.
Well, this story doesn't come without challenges. And so we should talk about that a little bit. Any major transformation can come with, change management is something we put a lot of emphasis on. As lean practitioners, we're constantly doing that. We can never overdo it. And if it's a big transformation, it's going to come with the large challenges, even if the case for change is dramatic. Some of the key concerns that we've heard from agencies include everything from data privacy and security issues to integration with legacy systems, and of course, fundamentally, the cultural shift towards a fully data-driven decision-making environment. And the cultural shift is a big one. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. Interoperability is sort of an interesting topic because we face the problem anyway. So the question becomes, do we want to fix it or address it or not? Many agencies have got legacy systems, sometimes really legacy systems, and they don't easily integrate with new technologies. However, there's scalable solutions existing that allow us to bridge these systems and not have a major disruption. Robotic process automation, for example, is an example where legacy systems can become, far more open to programmatic changes. Let the machine do the clicking, that kind of thing. In other words, we don't have to just turn a blind eye to the problem with legacy systems because it's already there. We can actually turn towards doing something about it, and eventually making it easier to have the connectivity between systems, especially modern ones. The cultural shift is a different one. It's going to take a lot more work on all of our parts. For some, adopting AI and data-driven mindset, can be a challenge, possibly a big challenge. It requires comprehensive training and a commitment to fostering a culture of innovation. Now, most of us like innovation, but the truth is if we don't run out of time and we're really busy and, frankly, feeling like we're not serving customers, it's hard to think about innovation. However, if everyone thinks about where they spend reoccurring time, and if those reoccurring processes can be automated, We can easily create minutes per operation of opportunity for every person in the workforce. Minutes. Imagine the productivity of just 10 minutes back to each person. Let's say we had a state with 76,000 workers. That would be 760,000 minutes over 1,500 days of redirected time for service delivery. That's a phenomenon that's worth considering because it's not that many minutes per person, and yet it's a huge change. Sven, what are your thoughts on the whole idea of redirecting like this?
Oh, it blows my mind. I mean, just I want to say that number again, 760,000 minutes. And if you think about that, if that's just 10 minutes per person per day, do you know how much capacity that adds to government with something as small as that? You don't have to boil the ocean. You have to just start to warm it up a little. This is where, developing strategies to overcome those hurdles is so important. And we really we promote a philosophy of less is more in the application of AI today. First of all, artificial intelligence has been around for a long time, but what's really transformed it is this generative AI capability, the ability for conversations and things to take a more human-like form is now changing the way that we can leverage that technology. And we also emphasize, training to build AI literacy and foster a culture that really embraces innovation with small wins, tracked and measured over time. So 10 minutes per person can quickly become hours per person per week of time savings. Those numbers just continue to multiply and add to, again, that time available for achieving that mission. So all across the board, we're really looking at how do we leverage the technology one small piece at a time to, again, provide those services to those most in need as quickly as possible, and also helping to prioritize, where do we put our efforts first to make sure that we're taking care of the most demanding needs as quickly as possible, but making sure we get to everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Sven, I'm tracking our time and the things that we want to talk about, and I'm just going to make a small suggestion. I'm going to move through the results takeaway section on my part quickly because I really want us to talk about the curation of authoritative data, and that leads naturally then into our discussion about why is the future now and not in not 5 years from now. So just a small adjustment on that. It's important in this story to recognize that we don't have to wait. And the examples we've given, with, a bot that actually is much more intelligent, or call centers that are data that's being actually analyzed and adjusted, these are very real things that can happen right now. In addition, the whole idea of being able to curate large quantities of data that we have to look at, they might be service manuals, policies, whatever, that's a very, very important step. And frankly, it's a step that together, Sven, you and I are taking right now because we see the importance of it and the fact that it makes a difference. Let's take a quick look then at how that works in terms of authoritative data, and then we'll roll into the future is now.
Sure. Yeah. So some of the early wins that we're seeing, and one of the key advantages of leveraging AI is its ability to digest so much information so quickly. What that allows us to do is to go through massive data sets and, for example, surface authoritative data within seconds without needing to hunt for it, where it might live, and then without the dreaded keyword searches. Everyone questions about how to do their job. And by finding the right answers is a real recurring challenge. If staff can ask questions using natural language, like talking to a colleague over a water cooler, effectively, we're shielding others in the organization too from that dreaded tap on the shoulder looking for an answer, which is, disruptive. But it also is taking away from their contribution to the mission. Well, This really helps to ensure that decision makers are always working with the most accurate, relevant, and timely information when it is farmed out in real time. So whether it's analyzing policy impacts, discovering where there are knowledge gaps, or improving service delivery, I can't emphasize enough just how this AI-powered EPM can really help drive better outcomes because we're able to apply these same techniques that we're seeing across the board with AI technology being applied in something so impactful as our performance management.
Absolutely.
And yeah, go ahead.
It reminds me of something that our analyst Paul discovered the other day, and it was kind of on one hand it was a big aha, like, well, wow. On the other hand, it was very simple. So he was busy, as you know, he was busy doing some training of one of our knowledge bases, but he was noticing that it wasn't exactly speaking like state government. And it was such an easy answer. It was just train it some more, give it the right information. He actually, believe it or not, fed into it one of his master's theses on public policy, which I thought was kind of funny. But it really helped. All these things helped because all he was doing was making sure that when somebody asks a question such as what is a particular policy relative to, say, child welfare, that in fact the answer came back not only accurate, but sounding as though it belonged in government. You know, you mentioned, start small, don't go too fast, but get something done. These are the steps that actually make a difference, and they're things we can do right now with the technology we have. I think that's pretty exciting, and quite frankly, it's got all of us charged up to just start moving forward, which leads to we want to really take a little bit of time now and do a retrospective. How did we all get here where we suddenly have AI? It seems suddenly, maybe not so sudden. How did we get here? And we suddenly have technologies that can help take traditional work like EPM and power it up big time. I think it's worth taking a moment to say, well, there's a story as to how we got here, and that story will help us know why we're actually in the future today and why it can just get better. Sven, take a little bit of time to walk us through that history.
Yeah, I promised you guys earlier that we were going to have a brief history of the evolution of AI because it can feel like something that just suddenly appeared. But in reality, artificial intelligence at that computational level, it really has its roots in the mid 20th century, beginning back with some of the pioneering work of Alan Turing. And he's the one who proposed the concept of being capable of simulating human intelligence in a paper he wrote back in 1950. He's also the same guy who actually broke the Enigma code in World War II that allowed the Allies to defeat the German army. Well, take that body of work, and early AI research in the 50s and 60s really focused on things like symbolic reasoning and problem solving. And that led to, systems like the logic theorist and the general problem solver. Fast forward about 2 decades, and you get into the 80s, and expert systems which used predefined rules to mimic decision making, that really started to gain prominence. But AI struggled with scalability and adaptability until the resurgence of neural networks in the 90s. Think about the challenges back in any time before, say, 1995. Computers just weren't that powerful. They didn't have the capabilities. Well, that started to change. And, inspired by advancements in computational power and algorithms, everything started to grow at an astronomical pace. So by the mid 2010s, things like deep learning was driven by vast amounts of data and improved hardware. I mean, think about how much data we amassed from the mid 90s up through the mid 2010s. And then you take the computational power. It's those things coming together at the right time is really what has propelled all of these new capabilities going forward. And that enabled breakthroughs in things like image recognition and natural language processing and autonomous systems. So today, it's now 2024, AI has really evolved into a ubiquitous technology with capabilities ranging from like language generation real-time translation, to things like autonomous vehicles and medical diagnostics at a distance. And think about how far we've come and how fast that seems to have been. But it all started so long ago, and it was always just waiting for the right components of technology and knowledge to come together. That's really what marked its transition from theoretical science that was, locked in a lab somewhere to really transform a transformative industry tool that's now at the fingertips of just about everyone. All the modern cell phones are carrying these capabilities with them, and we're going to see that grow. So, applied again back to performance management, it unlocks the potential of everyone, making agencies more agile, efficient, and responsive. And the question isn't if, it's but when will your agency embrace these emerging technologies? Now, all of this begs the question of where to start. And my recommendation is wholeheartedly to start small and scale smart. Integrating AI into state government operations is a step-by-step process that can start small, such as automating a report or using predictive analytics for a single department, or making organizational knowledge faster and easier to discover and use. And then scale as your agency becomes more familiar with AI technologies. By addressing the challenges like data governance, interoperability, and training, state governments can harness AI's potential to transform their performance management systems, really improving the efficiency. That's going to cause a better service to the public and really gain the trust of those who will depend on it. I kind of unpacked a bit there. Aaron, what do you know?
I think the history, as always with history, helps us understand where we're going. I found myself seduced into thinking that everything happened instantly in the last couple of years until, of course, I realized that wasn't true. And I think the message for those of us that have been practicing lean and enterprise performance management now for years is we always want to stick with the best principles we know. So first principles of good performance management. And so nothing about this discussion is about changing that. It's about augmenting it. And I think that if we start small, like you said, then what we won't have chaos. Also, we have to be cognizant of the fact that, there are going to be folks, CISOs, for example, who have very strong feelings about how we do this. And we have to respect that because, after all, they have a job that if it doesn't go well, it's a nightmare. So again, I think what it really says is we've got the technology now. Let's apply it to the best practices we have today and then move forward from there. I think our examples kind of illustrate that. Personally, I just find the idea of making the bot, for example, that story, just simply smarter, or making the call center smarter. Mm-hmm. These are just good examples. Simple predictive stuff, like you mentioned. We don't have to predict everything. Don't have to predict, the weather's going to change. How about just predict that a measure is going to go poorly in the next month, and we could do something about that by applying a simple action plan. These are real world things that we do, and so I think they're very important. Well, Sven, it's time for us to wrap up and see about questions. So we'll start that now process. Just a quick reminder, in your materials will be a slide that looks just like this. Please take a moment and click the QR code or the link and answer a few questions, and then we'll get back with you and let you know what we think your current state of performance management is. And with that, on behalf of both of us, thank you so much for hosting us. Thank us for being here. And let's see if they got some questions for us.
Hi. Yes, there's a couple of great questions in the Q&A. One question reads, this is a chicken and egg question, but if your organization is not very mature in performance management generically, should you focus on making strides without AI first, or is AI an enabler for a faster and or more rigorous jump into enterprise performance management?
That's a great question. Either one of us can start. Your call. Your call.
I'll just say these are not mutually exclusive. I think they're complementary. Anything that you can do to understand the data to move the needle is a start in performance management. if you know that you can take a little bit of time away from one activity and put it onto another one, and that's better for your organization, you've started enterprise performance management. But no, you don't have to skip one to do the other. Aaron, I know you've got some thoughts on this too.
Yeah, I agree. Clearly, focusing on performance management and the basics is essential. I mean, to a large extent, that's what this conference is all about, is how do we do that and how do we learn and move forward. But I would urge everybody to recognize that AI is here today, and there's always a way to start, even if it's nothing more than automating one simple process of gathering data, or actually gathering a whole bunch of manuals together and simply presenting an answer to your question, how do I do something and what is my SLA? Start somewhere.
Thank you. We had a couple questions in here that kind of spoke to the difficulty or the difference in government work, where we're really trying to provide unique services to unique individuals based on what's going on at each combination of what somebody might have going on is a little different. And so how do you use AI when you're really trying to tailor services?
I'll grab that one. That is precisely why AI is so powerful for government. We've been working with several social service organizations across the country, and the challenge is every single person has their own unique set of challenges, abilities, and needs. And the combination of services available, service providers to provide those services, the complexity of their scenario. These are research opportunities, right? This is where counselors have to go out and research to find out, okay, what pathways are available? What can we do? What are the options that we can put on the table? And that can take a long, long time. So something that our company did, we put together a tool called the Knowledge Interpreter, where we take all of the laws and policies and procedures, we put them into an AI system where when people do ask questions about, they can describe a scenario about someone that they're serving, and very quickly the system can go off and find all relevant sources that are going to help guide them to where they're not having to hunt and peck and do, keyword searches. Instead, they can look at a summary of what was discovered and then click into direct links back to the authoritative source that is the real guidance for them. So it's an example of where, because that situation and every situation that you're serving is unique, it makes your discovery harder, and that's an area where AI can really help.
Thank you so much, Aaron and Sven. This has been a wonderful session. It's certainly something that has caught a lot of our conference attendees' attention. At one point, we had well over 850 people in this session. So you're really hitting the nail on the head with where the interest is and what people are thinking about and concerned with. So thank you for bringing this to our Lean conference. I want to give a big thank you to everyone out there for being here and joining us today. A thank you to Kelly, our ASL interpreter. And just to let you know, there's a lot more of the conference to come. You can visit our website at results.wa.gov to revisit sessions you watched live, watch sessions you may have missed, download copies of presenter materials, and sign up for additional sessions. So as soon as we sign off here, you'll see a survey pop up. Please, again, take a moment to complete the survey. It's really short, so that we can gather your real-time feedback. And we hope to see you throughout these next 2 weeks at more of our conference sessions. So thanks again for attending today. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.